Hi, I'm Helen. Today I'm going to run through with you a technique that we're calling huskying. It's basically a fun and social way of helping someone that uses a wheelchair on a bushwalk. It's a technique that's really helpful on sections of terrain that are maybe quite steep or a bit rough, or perhaps you've got to the end of the day and are a bit tired. So for huskying, what you're going to need is 2 ropes, a carabiner and at least one other person. So I'm going to introduce Matt here, who's going to be helping me out today. So what I'm going to do is run you through the setup for huskying, and I'm using at the moment a freewheel. The rope that I use is just standard climbing tape that you can buy from any outdoor shop, but equally you could just use rope that you get from your hardware store. Similarly, I use a carabiner that looks like this. You can get this again from climbing stores, or equally well from your local hardware store. I do a simple loop over the freewheel like this, and then stick in my carabiner like this, and add in my second rope here. This just provides a little bit of extra length, but also gives you the flexibility if you want to change the length of rope depending upon the steepness of the hill. Okay, so I'm going to pass the rope over to Matt there, and now what he's going to do is put that over his body and lay that rope over the front of his waist there and clip it into the waist strap of his backpack, and that provides a comfortable way for him to have a bit of pressure there as he's tugging the chair along, but without obviously sacrificing the length of rope there. Great, so Matt, today for huskying, what I'll get you to do is just walk on the track as you would do normally. Just be conscious of keeping a fairly constant pace. If you notice any divots in the ground, just try to select a route where you're not going to be going up and down those too much, so smoother is better. If you notice a bit of cross slope in the track, just be thinking of a way to minimise that. So that might mean sticking in the middle of the trail, or it might mean staying on one side or the other side. When we get started, let's just make sure that we communicate to each other so that I don't get pulled off by accident, and just be aware that I'm going to be doing quite a bit of manipulation of the chair if we come across any sort of uneven points, so you don't have to stress out about that, but I might yell out things like a little bit fast, a little bit slower here, or 1, 2, 3 if we're going over a particularly difficult section. So just lots of communication, and let's have some fun. Awesome, so you ready?
Ready? You ready?
I'm ready. Let's get going.
Well, we're out here to have a lot of fun, and to do that we need to stay safe. So we're going to keep chatting about making sure people are feeling comfortable and safe. And as a husky, I want to think about my back and making sure I'm not doing myself any damage. And I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can attach yourself to avoid that twisting and bending. So the first way is what Helen showed us, across the front, using your belt to hold it in place. Some people really like this. I find it pulls my hips around and can put a bit of pressure against my stomach. So I want to show you another way, which is very similar, but you bring it up behind your harness and you use your pack to carry the weight. So you clip it in, and then it's just pulling against the harness of your pack as you walk. So feel free to keep mucking around with this. If you're not carrying a pack, because maybe Helen's carrying it for me, or it's a short walk, you can use another piece of strap to form a harness, going across your body or across your waist. But the trick is just keep talking and make it work for you.
I like to carry with me a bunch of different tape to give me the flexibility to vary the length of the husky tape depending upon what the terrain brings. For a shorter husky tape setup, the advantage of that is that it's really social and can mean that you can communicate really clearly with your team as to what's going on. The disadvantage of a shorter setup is, of course, that as you get onto steeper terrain, the front of the freewheel will start lifting, and that can lead to the chair misbalancing or even tipping over backwards. So there's some pros and cons there of a shorter setup. With the longest setup, the advantage of that is that it's much better on those steeper terrain. You don't find that your chair gets lifted up quite so much. The disadvantage being that it's less social, a bit harder to communicate with your team, and the rope's more likely to be a little bit to drag more and potentially get caught up in the wheel. So the main thing is just to play around with it and have enough flexibility in your setup that you can adapt to the conditions. So if you have a couple of people on a trip, you can do a double husky setup, and that's a really fun way of making use of your whole team. It also makes it a lot easier on uphill stretches. So with the single husky setup, we didn't have to worry about getting equal pull force from either side, but that's something to consider when you've got two different people, because otherwise you're going to end up getting pulled too much on one side. So the way that I've get around this is I basically use a carabiner at the end of this first rope that we set up on the freewheel, and then we've got this longer white rope which connects to one person and then the second person, and that is basically connected to the blue rope using a carabiner so that it can move freely. And that means that if this person pulls off on that side or this person pulls off on that side, it doesn't actually change the direction that the chair is moving in. So that just makes it overall a lot more comfortable. So the thing about huskying is you don't need complicated gear to get started. You can literally just use some rope that you found in the back of your car. Look, even tie-down straps for roof racks in your car will work perfectly. If you don't have a carabiner, not the end of the world. Just use knots to tie the ropes to the freewheel and get started. Get out there, have some fun, and I hope you enjoy it.